Thank you again. This is the third segment of the presentation about the psychology of persuasion in politics. And in this segment, we're going to get all the way down to the face-to-face, ground zero level of how is this actually done. And what this involves is communication skills. And this is something we've all had experience with, whether it's with your spouse or your kid or your boss. We all have had the situation where we want somebody to do something that we want them to do, and they may not want to do it. So you've all had experience with it. Some of us are more successful than others, but we're going to talk about some very basic principles of how to communicate with people and ultimately how to get them to agree with you. So I call your attention to the last sheet, last page in the handout, because we're going to be working down that pretty straightforwardly in this presentation. The first thing is slow down. You know, when you're sent out there to canvass, it's like, oh, I've got 200 doors to knock, and and you're rushed, and you read the script, and you get out of there as fast as you can. That doesn't work. So, I mean, sometimes we're forced to do that because of situation. But if you've got the time, you really need to slow down, change your expectations. This is not a quick door knock. I'm coming here, and I'm going to have a conversation, and I'm going to listen and learn. And then I'm going to make my pitch, whatever it is. This is kind of a measure twice, cut once kind of approach to things. And you also need to understand the broader context of who you are and what you're doing. What research and learning theory tells us is that people learn best, or they are persuaded, however you want to look at that, when they get a consistent message from multiple sources over time with multiple repetitions. So multiple repetitions of a consistent message from multiple sources over time. That's when people actually change. If you can create that, you've done something good. So you run the ad on TV, you get a direct mail piece, you see something on Facebook, and then a friend of yours says, yeah, I love that product. Chances are you're going to buy that product if you need it when you've gotten that consistent message, multiple sources, multiple times, multiple repetitions over the course of time. So understand that when you are responding on a Facebook post or knocking on a door or making a phone call, it's in that broader context of everything that's being done. People are getting messages about all of this all the time through the media. Their friends are saying things to them all the time. We are out there running Facebook ads. So you're not alone in this with whatever it is you're doing. Understand that you are an important part of that overall strategy, because you are an important part. And especially when you're face-to-face, either virtually or really, that's as good as it gets. Okay? So you don't have to do everything all at once. People have already received a lot of information. So slow down, take a deep breath. Everything is not on your shoulders at that moment. Your goal, going back to the stages of change, is to move that person from wherever they are to the next stage. And hopefully they've heard a lot of stuff to support that when you get there. So slow down. Understand what you're doing in context, take a deep breath, and then proceed. So you need to set a realistic goal for every interaction that you have. One of the goals is, okay, stages of change, I need to move them from stage 1 to 2, 2 to 3. So think about who you're talking to, because you might be writing a letter to the editor. You're not talking to an individual. So think, okay, who do I want to approach? Who do I want my letter to appeal to when I write this? Do I want to appeal to already action-oriented Democrats and get them to do more? Or am I talking to the people who aren't sure what to do and I want them to now commit to doing something? So it's a very different letter, depending on who you're writing to. And so sometimes there may not be a universal letter to go to everybody. I don't think there is. You have to pick a target audience when you do those things. Even posting in Facebook. There's the person who's calling you a snowflake, but then there's 30 other people who are kind of watching that thread, people who don't comment, but you know they're looking at it. So you might be thinking, well, there's probably some reasonable people behind there. So yeah, I'll respond to this guy. And I'll be reasonable, but I'm really not talking to him. I'm talking to the 30 people who are changeable. So I'm going to ask my questions. I'll do my validation, thinking of those people in that thread. So you got to pick a target. And now you've got the tools to figure out who you want to talk to and how you want to talk to them. And then you can phrase your responses accordingly. So set realistic goals for that moment and that event. The next important thing is to, when you begin, you have to introduce yourself in some context, and you want to introduce and align. Now, introducing is something, again, if you're knocking on doors or doing phone banking, hi, my name is Wayne Braffman, and I'm with Kennett Area Democrats or whatever group you're calling from. That's normally what we do. So you've introduced, but you haven't aligned. What I like to do when I'm out knocking on doors is, hi, I'm Wayne Braffman, Kennett Area Democrats. I'm your neighbor from South Street. Now, something big just happened. That's a big difference. So if you're in position to say, and there is something about me that is like you, you want to do that. Now, you might have to know something about the person, especially if you're working in an area that's not your home base. But you can say that in a town. I don't live near you, but I'm also from Kennett Township. Anything you can do to align yourself with the person that you're talking to before you even tell them what it is you're all about, that's powerful. For this reason, think about who you listen to. Who is persuasive to you? Who can change your mind on any topic or any issue? It's usually, it's always somebody you trust, right? If somebody I trust, and especially that I trust on this subject, tells me, pretty good chance I'm going to believe that person. And there's a hierarchy of who is influential to you. Somebody who's knowledgeable, that you know and have an excellent relationship and you trust and like, that's going to be the most persuasive person in your life. Somebody who you trust but don't really know because you trust them by reputation, they're knowledgeable, okay, they're powerful but not as powerful. Somebody that you don't know is less powerful. Somebody who belongs to your church is a little bit more powerful than somebody that you have no affiliation with. Down to the guy on Facebook who says, you don't know what you're talking about. Now, you're not going to trust that person at all, right? Just like we trust different media. When you read something from Breitbart, chances are you're not going to trust it a whole lot. When Rachel Maddow says it, you're probably going to trust it more, right? So there's this hierarchy in our world of trust. And here, trust is critical because if I trust you, and secondarily, if I like you, I'm more prone to accept what you have to say to me. So 99% of the time, we're talking and interacting with people we've never met before. So they're not going to have a high level of trust. So you want to work your way as high up the trust level as you can. And that's why if you can say, I'm your neighbor from South Street, that's powerful because you've also given personal information. You've deepened the relationship because now they know something about you. You know where they live because you're knocking at their door, and now they know where you live. So that helps establish trust very, very quickly. Anything else you can say in the course of your conversation that helps you align with them and let them know that you are like them or that you are trustworthy, that helps. Now, we don't often have a lot of information to do that, but listen for it, because anytime you can spot something, it's, oh yeah, my sister goes to that church too. That's powerful. It makes you more acceptable, moves you up that trust hierarchy in terms of their willingness to accept your message. So that's the idea of you introduce and you align. The next two things obviously have to do if you're physically with somebody. If you're on the phone or on Facebook, you can't do these things. But just simple listening skills, eye contact. You can't be there, you're out there and you've got your clipboard. You can't be sitting here and say, well, I'm here to ask you certain questions, and are you going to trust me? Are you going to listen to me if I'm not looking at you, especially while you're talking? So just like normal life, make eye contact whenever you're involved with anybody. Eye contact tells people you're listening. It tells them that you care. Body language. Yeah, I'm here with my clipboard. Well, if you're on the other side of that clipboard and you're talking and I'm writing things about you, how do you feel? Yeah, what's he writing? What's that? What's he looking at? So if you've, and most of us do have a clipboard when we knock on a door. So when you get there, hi, I'm Wayne Braffman. I'm your neighbor over on South Street. And we're calling on people who are registered independents. Show it to them. There's nothing secret about this. Show them what you're looking at. They're not going to read the whole thing. I mean, if they want to say what's, and we just say, yeah, here's your name. This is a list we got from Voter Services. Show it to them. That establishes trust. I'm not somebody sneakily writing a dossier on you.
I've been amazed to find how many people are shocked to know that their voter registration is a public record.
Yes. But again, you're giving them good information and you're being open and honest. But again, before you've asked them to do anything, you're establishing. Right, but you're establishing trust. And that's why you do it. So yeah, don't do this. And look at people. And if you're fortunate enough not to have a clipboard and you're talking to somebody because it's at a party or something, yeah, don't do this. Don't get into a defensive body language stance. You want to be open. You want to, I mean, you know how to do that. So make eye contact, look at them, open up your body language, tell them with your behavior, I'm listening to you, I care about you, and I'm open to having a conversation. Because what happens when you are physically with somebody, there's a natural tendency to reciprocate. If you make eye contact, they're more likely to make eye contact. If you are defensive, they're going to ape you and mimic you. So if you do this, they will do that. And now the rest of the conversation actually gets easier. So just be aware of those kinds of factors.
All this becomes a lot easier if you're genuinely interested in the person and genuinely care about what happens, not that you're just going through the motions.
Yes. So you may need to psych yourself up before you go out. Because these are people you've never met. So your motivation has to be the cause that you're out there for and your belief in the cause. And yes, although this is hard for me, it doesn't come natural for me in many ways to do all this with somebody I've never met. I need to prepare myself and understand that because I'm doing it for the cause. Right. Maybe by the end of the conversation I will actually care about that person. But you're not going to have that and you've got a list of 200 people. You're absolutely right. You have to get into that mindset of doing this.
You have to look at every door like a present. You just don't know what's under the wrapping.
Right. Okay, so those are a couple of basic things that only are relevant, obviously, when you're face-to-face with somebody. The next one is probably the biggest one and the most time-consuming one. And that's demonstrating that you understand, which implies that you're listening. We haven't talked about, we're up to item number 6, and we haven't talked about your ask yet, what it is you're asking these people to do. Listening is what this whole process is all about. And really, we're talking about listening skills in all of this. Because most of us like to talk, and even more, most of us like to be heard and understood. We feel good when that happens. So that's the immediate goal that you have before you. You need to demonstrate that you really are listening and that you get it before you do your asking. And again, this works for us in terms of the stages of change model, because we need to collect information to know, are you pre-contemplative or contemplative or action? So we need to listen a lot. We need to hear whatever we can pick up about the person we're interacting with in order to decide at what level are we going to join with them in this conversation. So it's really important that we spend some time listening. Slow down, listen, ask a question to open up the conversation. You know, hi, my name's Wayne Braffman. I'm your neighbor on South Street. I'm here about the gerrymandering issue. Are you familiar with gerrymandering and what the problems are? They're going to tell me yes, no. They're going to ask for advice. They'll tell me whether they're for it, against it. Fine. But I've asked the question to initiate, and now I'm listening. And by listening, I can tell exactly what I need to do next. I don't have to give them information if they're already in favor of ending gerrymandering. So I can start with, fine, sign my petition. But if they say, no, I know the word, but I don't really know what it means, well, now I have a whole different approach.
There's an acronym, and it came out of a TED Talk, and it supports very much what you're saying. And it's about listening, and obviously listening is key to everything you're saying. It's Julian Treasure. He has this TED Talk, but it talks about rasa, and it's receive, appreciate, summarize, clarify, summarize, and actually his last step is act. So
Okay.
it just ties together a lot of this, and of course it goes to Stephen Covey and others have said listening is the most important. We spend 60% of our communication time listening, but we typically only maybe hear or understand 25%. He says seek first to understand, then to be understood. But anyway, it's just very much aligned with
Yes.
what you're saying.
And what I'm... What,
Name of the person again? In the TED
I
Talk?
saw this on a Julian Treasure TED Talk, and he talks about this. I forget the name of the TED Talk, but he said, "Hey, an acronym helps: RASA, receive, appreciate, summarize, and ask." And it's very much what Wayne is saying.
and I'm actually going to go through those elements in a slightly different format right now. And you're right. We spend a lot of time listening, but we don't spend enough time hearing. Because during that listening phase, we're often thinking about, well, what am I going to say next?
Right.
And we're not really receiving, and we're not demonstrating that we have received.
Hey, we can all do better.
Yes.
25. We can do better than that, and that
Yes.
can be our competitive advantage.
Absolutely. So how do you do that? So the other person is now talking. You've succeeded in getting them talking. And going back to our stages of change, well, first thing you do is you validate. Whatever it is that they're saying, you validate it. I get why you're angry about the takers not paying any taxes. I get it. I understand why that would make you angry. You may not agree. You don't have to agree with them, and you're not lying to them. Your statement is, I understand why that would make you angry. That's a validation. Okay? So as you're listening, look for opportunities to validate, because it demonstrates you're listening, plus it increases your alignment with that person, and your trust level is going up. That they know that they're talking to somebody who is reasonable, who also sees something similarly, or at the very least understands why you're feeling the way you are. You guys have been great tonight. You've been nodding to let me know that you get what I'm saying. And that's very encouraging. If you guys are all like, I'm dead in the water up here because I don't know whether I'm getting through or not. So yeah, nodding is super important. You know, and a smile doesn't hurt either if they say something funny or interesting or that you agree with. You're signaling them. You don't have to talk. And even though they're talking, they're listening to your, again, more body language. So nod, smile. Confirm that you've heard them by saying, whoa, let me interrupt you here for a second. Let me see if I get this straight. What you're saying is. phrase it back to them. Just rephrase it, put it into your own words. And again, it's a confirmation. It's proving. I care so much about what you're saying that I want to make sure I get this right. Is this what you're saying? And they may say, well, no, you got half of it right. Well, good. Tell me more. I want to make sure I get this right. You're demonstrating your concern for that person's opinions. Okay, so that's another technique you can use as you're in the listening phase of this. Ask clarifying questions. You said this. I wondered, so does that mean such and such? Again, ask them to just extrapolate, explore further what it is they're saying to you, because you want to really make sure you understand what they say, because what they say is important to you. So again, asking clarifying questions, not challenging questions like, well, your position disagrees with such and such. No, that's not what you want to ask. You just want to ask, okay, how would that apply to this situation? And you honestly just want to know, because you're collecting information. And whenever possible, agree. If there really is something that they say that you agree with, say, absolutely, I agree with that. Because again, all of these things build trust in terms of your interaction with that person. And again, most of the time it's somebody you've never met before. So you're working your way up from an anonymous, why is this person knocking on my door, with a lot of distrust, to, oh, well, they're talking about something I'm interested in, and they agree with some of the things that I think, and they actually seem to be a pretty nice person because they're listening and they're asking me decent questions, and yeah, they might be okay. So you've moved way up the hierarchy before you get to the point where you're giving your ask, and that's important because you want to develop as much trust as possible. If it's appropriate, if there's some opportunity, you can even do some personal disclosure. The topic, yeah, well, I had this experience about something. A friend of mine lost their insurance. Well, when you divulge some personal information, that deepens the relationship. Because again, the norms are if you say something personal, I feel an obligation to say something personal. It's kind of a little dance that we do in any interaction, conversation. They may not go personal immediately because their trust level is wavering, but you've offered something. Just like when you offer your home address, you've done something nice. So again, think of all of those kinds of things in terms of your listening skills, and the goal of listening is, one, to gather information so you know what questions to ask when you do start to make your ask, your request. And second, to build trust. And you can build trust in a minute and a half. You can move pretty high up the trust scale just by nodding and understanding and agreeing and confirming what they've said and asking some honest questions. So again, it's work, but it's powerful, because then when you finally do say, well, I was here to see if you would consider signing my petition or volunteering or whatever, you're much more likely to get a positive reception, because now this person feels that they know you at some level, a much better level than when you first knocked on the door. So you're increasing the probabilities of being effective in whatever it is you're asking for at that moment. I statements. We teach this in couples counseling. When couples are arguing, you did this, why did you flirt with her last night? And well, that's probably not going to get a very rewarding conversation going, interaction at home, when that's the way people are approaching it. So we teach I statements. The idea of I statements is that they're not aggressive. They're not attacking. They don't cause the other person to immediately go into a defensive shell. And what an I statement is instead of saying, why were you flirting last night? The statement is, I got really jealous and upset because to me it looked like you were flirting last night. Doesn't that sound different from, you SOB, why did you flirt with her last night? Okay, so that's where this comes from, the use of I statements. The same thing goes when you're having these conversations, because you might find yourself being drawn into a debate, or you might find yourself feeling you need to defend something. Or you might be really upset at what they just said, or the false facts that they're using. And you need to, and that's a natural reaction, but we need to be better than that. That's why I needed your emotions under control when you go out and do this stuff. To be able to say, well, I hear what you're saying, and I understand why you're saying what you're saying, but I have a different perspective on that. When I see that in the news or I hear that, I tend to feel really, really sorry for the families. That's different from, you don't care about the families of these people. See the difference? An I statement allows the other person to hear it. When you say you're wrong, and there are 100 ways you can say you are wrong, it's no different than if you pointed your finger. You're wrong. And do you like it when somebody points their finger at you? Absolutely not. So anytime you're saying you did this, or you're wrong, or you don't know, or you're an idiot, I mean, any of that kind of stuff, it's over. You will not be successful in getting your point across. But when you flip it around and just say, well, this is, I think, and especially if you can really bring it down that next level of personal disclosure of, and I get upset when this happens, and I get angry when I see this, or I don't understand when folks say this kind of thing. That's a whole different conversation. And it allows them to then, and again, normally people respond in kind. So if you offer it this way, they're more likely to respond in kind. If you're with somebody who doesn't respond to this at all, then we know we're at that 0 level of a person who's not worth dealing with. But you're doing the right things. You're listening, you're understanding, you're asking good questions, you're expressing yourself in a non-hostile, non-aggressive manner. If you can do those, and that takes practice, you're going to have to put in some work to feel comfortable doing all these things. But if you can manage that, you're driving your success rates and your probabilities of success way up. Okay, so there's one final item that I want to talk about to wrap this up, and that's the closing. You've been talking to somebody, you've listened, you've expressed interest in them, everything is good, you've asked your questions, you've validated, you've praised, whatever it is you had to do, you've done all of those things. And so how do you close? There's 2 things you want to do in your closing, pretty much no matter what the activity is. You want to ask if you can contact them again. Is it okay if I come back in a couple of weeks and follow up with you? Would you like to receive our newsletters and our mailings? Would you like to be on our newsletter list? Can you give me your email address so I can follow up with you? Establish some kind of follow-up contact, especially going back to the people who are in those pre-contemplative and contemplative stages of change, because you've started the process, but you need to go back. The second thing you want to do is plant suggestions as part of your closing statement. So you want to encourage them to continue thinking about the things you just talked about. I'm assuming you've been effective in getting them to do some self-exploration. They're starting to show shifts in their thinking. They're moving, that you succeeded in that. And so you want to make a suggestion, keep thinking about these things. And you might find that the more you think about it, the more reasons you'll discover for this, to do this, or to move to action, or to change, or to vote, or to volunteer. So that's a suggestion. I hope you'll think about this some more, and if you do, you might find more reasons. Okay? The reason that's important, and my research field, and I've published in hypnosis, is that it turns out that people are just as prone to accept suggestions whether they're hypnotized or not. You don't have to hypnotize somebody to get them to experience something. And those are called suggestions. So it turns out that you can actually say things like, you might notice if you think about this some more confirmatory evidence. You might notice more reasons to do this. And just by saying that to them, they now have a 50% higher likelihood of actually experiencing that. Okay? It's a therapeutic tool. It's used in cognitive behavioral therapy to increase the effectiveness of any therapy by 50%. You can get a 50% reduction in pain level by saying to people, and if you use these techniques, you'll notice over the coming weeks that your pain level is dropping. It's a suggestion, and it works. Okay? So you want to make sure that when you close, you've had a nice conversation, you've noticed some shifting, because that's what this is all about. It's shifting, it's persuading them to move in a direction. You give the suggestion, I encourage you to think about this some more, and if you do, you'll probably notice more reasons to do X, Y, and Z. And you've just increased by 50% the likelihood that that will actually take place. Okay? Similarly, you guys have been great. It's been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as you think about this tonight, you might notice.
You'll sleep a lot better.
No. You might notice a feeling to go to the Kennett Area Democrats page and make a donation. And should that occur to you, it's www.kennettareademocrats.com. But that's the general idea of how this works. Yes. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it'll be useful to you. I know that if you do think about this some more, and if you do practice it, and you can practice it on your spouse too, you will feel better about interactions that you have. You'll feel better prepared, and you will be more effective in achieving the goals you set out to. So thank you all for coming and for being here.